Ty, come on. We're live in 3, 2.
What is up, brothers and sisters? God Queen Tyrene coming to you live. We got something real special for you today. Your #1 most requested murder. It's the great heretic herself, the Firehawk.
Borderlands 3, to put it plainly, is just more Borderlands. You pick a Vault Hunter who has some cool special abilities, you have an insane amount of guns to choose from, and then you kill a bunch of stuff so you can loot more guns. It's a pretty simple formula that kicked off the entire looter-shooter genre, and we're all pretty familiar with it at this point. Borderlands 3 took a big step up over its predecessors in terms of gunplay. The guns feel so much better to shoot now than they have in the past, and their improved sound effects are excellent. The only complaint I have with the gunplay is that some of the guns feel completely useless, particularly the snipers. Gearbox is regularly balancing the game, so we'll see where things end up, but there's a pretty good variety in terms of weapons that are available to you for the most part, so that shouldn't really be all that much of an issue for you. Unlike previous games in the series, Borderlands 3 doesn't flood you with nearly as many side quests. In exchange, the side quests are a bit more fleshed out, have some background story to them, and oftentimes award you with additional rewards for completing optional objectives. They're still a little fetchy, but they're not nearly as monotonous as they have been in previous games, and it's a significant improvement. When completing the story, you unlock Mayhem Mode, which rewards you with better loot and more experience in exchange for stronger enemies and modifiers that affect your gameplay. Some of these modifiers increase things like gun damage or elemental damage, while others penalize you through things like negative damage or higher defenses for enemies. Mayhem Mode falls under what I would consider artificial difficulty. It doesn't actually make the game more challenging a lot of the time, it just makes it more annoying. There are some combination of modifiers that make the game an absolute nightmare to play, even with a busted endgame build, and that's just not fun. Story-wise, Borderlands 3 isn't anything particularly special. It's a fine story, but it's really not going to be blowing anyone's doors off. There are stretches of the game where the story's pretty good, and there are other stretches where it's just sort of not. As with previous games in the series, the characters are the true strength of the game's narrative. Borderlands 3 continues to do an amazing job with its many characters, and a not-so-good job with one character in particular. For me personally, the interactions between the characters is truly the most enjoyable part of any Borderlands narrative, and in that department, Borderlands 3 does a great job. Unfortunately, Borderlands 3 does a less than great job with its villains. Handsome Jack became one of the series' most iconic characters in Borderlands 2 because he was an incredibly dynamic character. The Calypso twins aren't completely awful, and their representation of streamer culture was actually pretty cool, but there was just something missing that kept them from reaching the same level that Handsome Jack reached in Borderlands 2. There's definitely a point in the story where I feel like the Calypso twins could have become notable villains in the series, but I feel like Gearbox completely missed the mark on that. And as an aside, Borderlands 3 maintains the series' notorious sense of humor. At times, I think Borderlands 3 leaned a little too much into memes and jokes that were a bit repetitive for my tastes, but it is what it is. You either like the sense of humor that these games have or you don't, which is totally fine. Borderlands 3 doesn't feel like a game that was quite ready to ship. I experienced a lot of performance issues on PC, many of which have been addressed in post-launch patches, but the game still suffers from some issues that I've found vary from player to player on all consoles. Borderlands 3 is a looter shooter, so of course it has a crap ton of replayability. You can farm for hours on end to get that perfect legendary gear with the perfect anointments for your siren, and then do it all over again for the other 3 Vault Hunters. Between your normal playthrough, your second playthrough in true Vault Hunter mode, and farming, you can get an insane amount of hours out of Borderlands 3. And if you want to replay through the game with all your incredibly strong gear, you can reset your progress in true Vault Hunter mode and do it all over again. And that's before we even get to what is likely to be a ton of DLC. At the end of the day, Borderlands 3 is a good game that's a hell of a lot of fun to play. I spent hours exploring and farming every little crevice the game has to offer, and it was a blast. It's not without its issues, but like its predecessor, it'll be supported with patches and a wealth of DLC for the foreseeable future.
Don't forget to like, follow, and obey.